This is the Practical Culture Spoilercast, a podcast devoted to diving deeper on the TV and movies, maybe sometimes video games that we and you are into. I'm your host, Logan Bowe, podcasting from Lehigh, and I'm joined as always by the one, the only Bob Caswell in the Bay Area. How are you, Bob?
I'm doing all right. How's it going with you?
Just hanging out. You know me.
Cool.
This week, we spoil life itself, and we'll also talk about what we're consuming and even make a top five-ish or so, list by the end. If you like what you hear, look for us on the usual podcast app and at practicalculture.com. We recommend you check it all out if you're into the show. We're spoiling TV, movies, probably sometimes video games. It's the Practical Culture Spoilercast. Let's rock. Oh, man, it is good to be back, Bob. Still rolling along here with the Spoilercast. But before we get into the spoiling, as always, let's chat a bit about what we're watching or playing. I'll even go first.
Good.
I finished Yellowstone that I've been harping on for the last couple of weeks. I mini reviewed on the main cast. I would love to do it with us, but I guess we'll see if we both end up catching up. I'm caught up on Better Call Saul. Now I need to watch the current or latest season, and I really like it sort of as a preview. And I think it's because partly that I relate more than I should to his life being a lawyer.
Interesting.
So it's good for me, but it's hard for me to know if everyone would like it. I mean, a lot of people do, but whatever. I'm catching up on Outlander now and also on Star Trek Discovery, which it's a travesty that I let that one get away from me. But that's what I am pumping forth on. And, of course, I hope the Sisters Brothers opens wide sometime soon.
Yeah, that's quite a good list, actually. Woo.
Anyway, hit us. What you watching?
So Sisters Brothers is another one. I'm with you there. I want to see that as well. I just finished Jack Ryan. Tom Clancy's Jack Ryan on Amazon. It was pretty good. I mini reviewed it. I'm watching Ozark Season 2. That's kind of my main beat right now. About halfway through. It's good, but I feel like the first season might be better. But I'll save it. We'll see. Still playing Shadow of the Tomb Raider. About 30-40% through that game. Also quite good. Or even better than whatever I said about Ozark just now. I'm really, really enjoying it, actually. I'm looking for something. I need to get that next show or that next video game in my mind, what it is going to be next. So we've got a lot of stuff coming out in the fall for video games for sure. But I'll keep you posted. I think I'll not speculate live, but that's where I'm at right now.
All right. Ready to get to this?
Yeah, let's do it.
Life itself. As a young New York couple goes from college romance to marriage and the birth of their first child, the unexpected twists of their journey create reverberations that echo over continents and through lifetimes. Starring Oscar Isaac, Olivia Wilde, and I mean, so many people. Mandy Patinkin, Annette Bening, Antonio Banderas, Olivia Cook, some lesser-known actors that it's not fair that I'm not mentioning by name, but I've gone on further than I usually do anyway. Written by and directed by Dan Fogelman, most famously of This Is Us.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, what did you think, Bob?
All right. So there's some words that come to mind when I think of this movie, Logan, and they're not very flattering words. I thought, I'm thinking boring, manipulative, borderline offensive, dismissive, contrived, not clever. That's contrived, I guess. I didn't like this movie. And there are a lot of reasons why that I need to fully be able to spoil it in order to express myself. So I'm glad we're here today to do this.
Well, good. I'm glad the Spoilercast is here for your mental health. Well, I'll be your Annette Bening. And,
Thank you.
And hopefully it ends for you better than it did for Oscar Isaac.
Right?
Although you probably were tempted it a few times, huh?
It was that kind of movie in a way. I'm leaning into how much I didn't like this movie because I didn't like it. And I'm usually the give it a benefit of the doubt sort of guy. I feel like you're more that guy for this movie than me. But tell me what you thought.
Well, for me, I didn't despise it quite so much. I spent the first little bit of the movie rooting for it. It sort of came into the world with too much of a bang. This weird, in your face, like, wait, could that be Samuel L. Jackson narrating? No, it couldn't be. That'd just be too weird. It can't. Wait, is it? No. Oh, yes, it is Samuel L. Jackson narrating that first scene. That was weird, definitely.
Yeah,
but I'm really trying to say what I thought about it. But that was a false start leading you into actually talking about the movie. So what I thought about. What I thought about it, I was rooting for it. I thought it had some potential at the beginning. It did bring up some interesting ideas about unreliable narrators or about comeback stories, but it was really heavy-handed even about those. It's like, now we're talking about some philosophical shit. Now I'm going to say unreliable narrator like 20 times, comeback story 1,000,000 times, just in case you weren't getting the subtext. I'm making it text, and that I got some fatigue over that. That's for sure. But I feel like each of the 5 chapters maybe had an interesting idea in it that if that were the whole movie, could have been an interesting movie.
Mm-hmm.
But it took so many shortcuts, and I, even though I'm going to pull the mean trick of, I'm not going to say manipulative, but it sort of overtly sentimental in cheap ways, that just on things like getting cancer, unexpected car wrecks, things like that. Well, of course, everyone thinks those are big and traumatic. You almost don't have to give any backstory. And he called my bluff when he said that by not giving any backstory on those. But it just made it so it wasn't a very specific or particular or moving movie in that sort of way. So the seeds of a good movie, seeds of 5 good movies probably, but it just didn't pull it off. And so I was left disappointed, frustrated, blue balls, you might say.
Disappointed and frustrated are also good words to describe how one would feel leaving this movie. Good. So we're pretty much on the same page. I'm just a little harsher because I don't know why, but it just, in the end, which we're going to get to, and as we spoil it, especially when a movie has one trick up its sleeve and the payoff is like, see, it's all because of this. And it's like, nope, didn't earn it. Not even close. That's not what this is about. You lose. This is dumb. That's kind of what I want to go with.
That is a pretty strong feeling you have about it. So were you hoping for more? Like, why the intense antipathy?
Yeah. I just
higher
don't.
expectations.
All these different actors and the pedigree, I guess, and the quality, the filmmaking itself isn't bad, which is kind of ironic. Like, it moves along with people acting and scenes and camera work and cities and indoor shots and all the standard stuff. It's just, it didn't deserve to exist in the way that it exists. I mean, this is more harsh talk from Bob, I guess, but it really wanted to show all these let's just cut straight to it. It shows
so chapter 1, should we just start?
Yeah, let's just
going through at least briefly.
Yeah.
I mean, the first about Oscar Isaac and Olivia Wilde, and we are learning it basically in retrospect and flashback from his therapy sessions that he's fucked up. But we learned that they were like high school sweethearts, that apparently they had a pretty big day talking about Bob Dylan and going to his parents' house. And then, I mean, how much play-by-play do we know? At first it's like, well, then she just left me. It's like, wait a second, she just left you? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
But oh no, she was hit by a bus while she was super pregnant.
Yeah, but before she's even hit by a bus, the movie goes on for like, I want to say what feels like an hour, but I'm pretty sure it was 20 minutes. I'm not sure. But we have Samuel L. Jackson narrating, which makes no sense, and it's trying to be clever, and then that's to teach us something about an unreliable narrator. And then
because we find out that was his screenplay, his writing exercise to help process.
Right, that's his to help him process, Oscar Isaac's character to process this tragedy in his life. And then we see Annette Bening get hit by a bus, which is part of that same narration with Samuel L. Jackson, which in and of itself is like shown in the movie like a real thing. But then the movie sort of lingers with a lot of Oscar Isaac wallowing in his delusion and pity and
making a scene in the not Starbucks coffee shop that is Starbucks.
Yeah, the branding was off on purpose. Obviously, Starbucks didn't want anything to do with this scene about people getting kicked out for making a scene, because they have their own issues how to handle things. Which that's a good point, though, because I had the same thought. I'm like, wait a second, is this Starbucks? No. He gets kicked out, and we just see a lot of him being super cynical and kind of, the world is against me, everyone is dumb, I'm just going to be a pouty face. And even his therapy sessions, he just says things to be weird and annoyed and talking to his therapist in rude ways, who's Annette Bening. But eventually he shoots himself in the head because.
I mean, I think there's some interesting things there.
Okay.
I mean, the beginnings of interesting things. To me, because we've already known that we're going to talk about unreliable narrators, like really heavy-handed, but we're ready for it. And he tells a story that we think is pretty much the real story, that basically it's just this fluke thing. But then he says, well, maybe I'm just making that up. Maybe I was really smothering her. Maybe she's trying to get away from me. Maybe I caused this. And at first when you hear that, it's like, ooh, maybe he's actually showing some insight. Maybe he did cause it. But we don't know why she left him at that point. We just know that she left him. And so, maybe she had some choice in the matter. But then we realize that no, it seems like it was a fluke thing, and it's just a coping mechanism to act like he had any fault in it. It was just one of those things. And so then we just go back and forth almost like a fourth time. It's almost like a fourth version,
right?
Because the unreliable narrator. And at that point I was giving the benefit of the doubt, like, okay, I can see. Let's play with some perspective here. Let's play with how we tell lies to ourselves. All right, this is interesting. But then all of a sudden he just shoots himself in the head.
Yeah. And is it just me, or like, if you're going to make the unreliable narrator point, this is like the most heavy-handed / extreme version of it, in a way that just feels like, yeah, the reason the narrator is unreliable most of the time isn't because of this. This is just a giant gimmick from this writer director. It's not representative of anything. Like, he's trying to make this sophisticated. This is what it's just like a subtext to this whole movie is like, you don't know what's really going on. You see, I'm going to turn things on their head. I'm going to give you some insight into how the world works by smacking you over the head with something that's blatantly obvious and not original at all, and calling it like, introspection and philosophy. I just felt like, even if he wanted to make the point he thought he was making, this was just a poor execution of it.
Fair enough.
But then what happens?
Pretty abrupt there. So then we go to chapter 2. So then their kid somehow survives their mom being hit by a bus and the dad killing himself. Her name's Dylan because Bob Dylan is a special thing in their relationship. And Mandy Patinkin is raising her pretty much alone because her mom, or his wife, the grandma. Who I can't think of that actress's name. Bad on me, but
smart, yeah.
But she, I guess, dies early too, and it's just Mandy and Dylan. And she becomes like a rebellious, bratty teenager.
Yeah,
in a punk band, smokes and drinks, whatever. Her grandpa, played by Mandy Patinkin, I can't remember his name, is just sort of whatever. Concerned. Erwin, concerned, but like not very much of a disciplinarian or anything. And she ends up having a scene about peanut butter sandwiches, and someone says something bad about her, and so she beats up this other girl at a show. And that's pretty much that chapter, right? Was there anything more interesting about it than that?
No, and it just ends, and you're like, okay, I didn't like this person, and I still don't like them, and she has a hard life because of death happening to her, but that doesn't make this interesting or make me want to like her or feel bad for her. And then it just moves on. Like, I felt like, okay, if you want to develop this or show some sort of multidimensional perspective on, people are traumatized and then this affects them in ways where they lash out, but we just get the lashing out and then it moves on, and it's like, all right. And I didn't feel like I got much out of it.
So chapter 3, we get Rodrigo, his dad and family mostly. And I think the most interesting part of this chapter is Antonio Banderas, who is the proprietor, the landowner of an olive farm in Spain. And there's this worker on his field who
takes care of the olives in a very special way. And Antonio Banderas takes note and is like, why do you take care of this? Takes a lot more effort to work. And he's like, are you criticizing me? What am I doing wrong? No, I'm just curious.
Well, then he tells his own story. Like, olives are important to me because of this. Well, and I guess the short version is his mom was Spanish, his dad's Italian, and his dad's a
Real prick.
class A prick, and never liked his mom as a dirty Spaniard. And I mean, it's a good performance, sort of moving the way Antonio Banderas points or tells it, but we don't really need to get into details. But anyway, he fled after his mom died. Antonio did, and just because his dad didn't think he was going to die, never made a will, just went to his next of kin, which is a son. So his son became super wealthy. And the first thing he did was he bought this olive plantation because it's something his dad hated and his mom loved. That's what he did with all his money. So that's why the olives are important to him. And and then that was a good scene. But it was sort of like all encapsulated. It didn't really help the movie be a movie anymore.
Yeah, and in fact, Antonio Banderas' entire character is sort of beside the point, if you think about it. Like, he didn't even need to be in this movie, but I'm glad he was. He was the most enjoyable part for me. This all could have been cut. It could have been somebody with a much smaller role. It didn't have to be him, but he gives it his all, and I really like that scene. I wanted that movie, Logan. I wanted to hear that story told like it was and then expanded, and somehow, I don't know, something about that I thought was interesting, and actually, I'm going to, dare I say, well-written and intriguing. This is the part of the movie where I was the most engaged.
And then it was an interesting, like, zap when, what's Rodrigo's dad's name? Goodness gracious, I can't even remember.
It's Javier.
Javier, who's the guy who's telling this to, as a way to try to get close to him and say, and so what's your story? And one of the things he says is, well, I don't think it makes you a good person. It doesn't make me like you more or anything like that. Or why not? Because I wouldn't have taken his money. And at first it's like, yeah, zap, zing. But wait a second. Why? What would that have proven? Would I have? I mean, it's hard to find a part of me that would not have taken his money.
Well,
just to prove a point.
And again, I actually liked this as an independent story inside of the shitty story, because Javier was also foreshadowing his own weakness. Like, he also has a unique story because based on this conversation, even though he's doing some verbal jousting here with somebody who's his boss and has money and he should be careful, he's being true to himself. And because of that, Antonio Banderas' character ends up offering him a job, quite an upgrade, and he gets to live in the estate and watch over the land or whatever, because Antonio Banderas is a rich guy who travels. And then this causes him, or allows him, to go to the love of his life and propose to the woman in his life, Isabel. And we'll get to that, I guess. But the point being that it's not the last time he has pride issues. So on the one hand, you see him, of all of the themes that our writer-director friend was trying to pull off here, this whole villain versus hero thing, I liked it for this character. Javier starts out as kind of a hero and this honorable, work with his hands, traditionalist, core values sort of guy. But then he lets that consume him as his story evolves to the point where he ends up getting, well, I guess we can get to it, but I just really like how who you think is an honorable, upstanding person actually is more complicated, and his positive aspects to his character end up hurting him just as much as helping him later on in life.
Because, yeah, he does get married to his woman and he lives closely. Then it just so happens that in a very judgment-free way, the movie sort of depicts Antonio Banderas' character, whose name have mentioned his name?
He doesn't even have a first name in the movie. It's Mr. Sacchione or
Sacchione, something like that.
Yeah.
He sort of is jealous that Javier has a family, starts spending more time with him. Doesn't really make a move, but you can kind of see he's jealous of the family. Then Javier's like, fine, I'm just going to get out of the way so nature can take its course. And my family can be the family of a rich man, which will be better for them. There were about 3, 4, 5 maybe scenes that I would have liked, and then just expand that story. And that's an interesting movie. But as it was, I just needed more, even though it was potentially a good movie there.
Exactly. I think of all of the interweaving stories here, all of this stuff happening in Spain was the most interesting to me, this chapter 3. And I guess we should say also that Isabel, his wife, well, they have a son together, and this son is the little boy. Um, I guess it comes in a later chapter, but he's the little boy in the bus that hits Olivia Wilde's character who dies and then has the baby that's the annoying
And
brat
we
of a
sort
child.
of knew that, but in this chapter we learned that he had like walked up to the front of the bus and said hi to the bus driver. And then even though Olivia Wilde probably should have just been standing right in the middle of the street, the bus driver was distracted at the exact moment where he could have braked.
Yeah.
And so he's connected to Olivia Wilde's death.
Yeah, and so this little boy ends up living with this pain and tragedy, and has to go through therapy. And a part of the reason Javier wants to give up on his family is because his boss, Antonio Banderas' character, is the one who can fund the therapy and is really helping the family. And then this honorable hero, Javier, is like super prideful and is like, I'm just out of here because I am not useful anymore if this other man with money can fix our problems for us, which is just a very a simplistic, but it's believable. I actually thought it was a well-written arc to show how Javier's honor could invert on itself and actually be a problem. So I liked all this, notwithstanding then Isabel, the wife, we see her going through cancer, and then we see, and I guess we get into new chapters at this point when we see what happens with the son. But all that to say that this is the silver lining of the movie. I really liked this whole chapter.
Yeah, but again, it was just the beginnings of a chapter. I didn't feel like I knew enough to think that to know whether it was Javier doing the right thing or doing the wrong thing.
Right.
I mean, probably a little bit of both, but there's so much to unpack and explore there that we didn't get. And so I was left a little hollow, even though it was the outline, the bullet points of an interesting story at that point.
For sure.
So chapter 4, Rodrigo, he's young. He really mostly knows of his uncle, Mr. Sacchione, being his father figure, and his mom having cancer. And he's athletic, and then he ends up going to NYU as a student, and with this really crazy girlfriend who pulls this crappy April Fool's joke about her being pregnant and not really caring about it. And he's like, yeah, we're definitely breaking up. And is there something more poignant to the story that I just glossed over? I feel like it's a little bit whatever, the Rodrigo story at this point.
Yeah. We're going to get to the end and how these characters apparently are super important, the bratty teenage one and then this Rodrigo story, but they're also the most underdeveloped and least interesting and boring people. So it's like, oh, everything hinges on them and they're super important. But yeah, chapter 4, for all I care, you just saved everyone a lot of time because it goes on for a while and it doesn't seem to be that interesting.
He does visit his mom at one point, and she gives this speech where she magically learns English, I guess, for the audience.
Yeah. I got that. I was like, what is going on? So we got the coffee shop problem. We got the fact that all these timelines use the same iPhone, and we're spending decades and everybody's in the present day. And then that whole scene where she's on her deathbed giving her son words of wisdom is super long, and it's okay, but it's all in English, and you're like, oh, you were speaking Spanish for all of the previous chapter. Just super weird.
And we'd had a lot of subtitles before, so they obviously thought that we could handle subtitles. If they didn't think we could handle subtitles, why do we have so many subtitles in chapters 3 and 4 already?
This was just a poor choice for us to talk about now.
But I mean, trying to get some of the themes of the movie out, like life will be hard and you've had more ups and downs than you should, but that's just life. So just keep moving forward. Don't stay down, and you'll be amazed at how, things end up moving along and it's not the end of the world or something like that.
And I was like, I'm so sorry you have cancer, but this is a long monologue. I mean, it's fine advice.
But then he goes back to NYU, and it's the same day that he breaks up with his girlfriend that he gets word that his mom dies. And then that same day, he goes to the spot where he, as a little boy, watched the bus kill Olivia Wilde. And it turns out that since it's also the birthday of Dylan, played by Olivia Clarke, she's sitting at that same spot too, and he's like, "Oh, are you okay? Don't be sad." And then she looks at him and fast forward everything until they are
grandparents.
Wait, are they grandparents of the people of the girl who we find out is the narrator?
I thought that's what they did. Like it was like, yeah, because they went on to have this many.
I think they're just the parents.
No, but in her voiceover, she said, "And who would have thought that they would have gone on to have this many kids and this many grandkids?" There is a line.
No, that's because she has like brothers and sisters with grandkids.
Oh.
Because then she talks about how her mother, and it shows the close up of Dylan, and her grandmother, and it shows Olivia Wilde.
Yeah. Okay.
Because as she's like a published author, so she's old enough to certainly have brothers and sisters with
who have kids. Okay, but they are grandparents in the context, even though the daughter narrating at the very end is just the daughter. Okay, got it.
I think that's right.
Right.
But yeah, so we don't really get any of their love story, just that destiny brings them together, I guess, and that somehow validates all the intense pain that everyone has gone through up to that point.
Yeah, so okay, here's where I want to unload like 17 problems I have.
Do it.
So for one, the only tragedies that can be shown in this movie, which are a lot, conveniently, kids don't die, and everyone has kids, because this movie relies a lot on you're me and I'm you and we have the same genes, and he makes all of this like posterity matters, because 50 years from now you could facilitate this happy reunion of wonderful family, and look how many kids and grandkids. So I really took issue with this because it's really sidestepping a lot of other problems by saying it's okay, big problems aren't as big as you think they are when you think of the big picture. And I just want to say, no, they are their own problems in the moment. And there are other problems where your solution, which isn't even a solution, it's just random chance, doesn't help either. So like, I don't know what the point of this movie is if this is supposed to be the warm fuzzy after all the tragedy.
Yeah, I mean, as someone who's gone through ups and downs in my life, it's like, okay, so unless this movie is, maybe if I do end up having a kid, all the ups and downs I go through will be worth it because my granddaughter might be a published author one day. Or I don't understand.
I don't either. And it's and there's nothing to show complexity. So this movie wants to be clever, but it's super simplistic because it's trying to be clever on the unreliable narrator bullshit stuff, which is sure, whatever.
But we don't really get that after the first chapter. That's the other thing that annoyed me about that.
Really good point. But even if we give it the benefit of the doubt and say you're doing something clever there, what it's not doing is talking about the nuances of complicated relationships or mental health, or everything is just black and white. Either you die by getting hit by a bus, or you're the best couple ever and destiny brings you together. You have kids and grandkids, and that's the metric through which we judge a happy life. Like, that makes no sense. If you're going to make a drama about relationships and you just make it so that all relationships are either death by tragedy or tragedy by death, or best thing ever when you get married when you're 21, it's like, well, maybe there's a little gray area in the middle there somewhere. I don't know. I just thought it was really simplistic.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think a lot of critics have complained about that. And Dan Fogelman has bristled and shot back that, well, people complain about that with my show This Is Us too, but it's really popular. So I think the critics just don't get a lot of what I'm going for.
I heard him say something like, well, white men don't know how to have emotions, to which some women were like, oh yeah, we didn't like this either. So I thought that was kind of funny too, that he was trying to like make it about, the white male not getting his movie or something. Well, whatever. He didn't like that people don't like this movie. And he probably put a lot of time, effort, and money into it. So sorry about that. But it's not good.
No, it really isn't that good. Anything more we need to say, Bob?
No, I think that's it. It's definitely something I don't recommend unless you want to see a bad movie. So there you go.
All right. That's an interesting backhanded recommendation, I guess. Well, let's move on and get to our top 5-ish list. And this time we are going to do, actually, we didn't mention this a ton, but a lot of this movie is expanded or fleshed out of the story is is filled in by flashbacks.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
it really is. And it spans like 50 years. And again, it all looks like the present day. And you don't really know this. And I guess it's on purpose because the movie's hiding itself from you and what it's really trying to say. But yeah, it's definitely a flashback movie and one of the worst ones at it as well.
But we decided we would do a top 5-ish list of flashback heavy movies, and there are a ton of movies like this. So if we forget your favorite, just tweet at us. We'll maybe make mention of it in a future show. But these are the ones that we are going to do. So it's
That's
definitive in that way. Caveats
really
aside, it's absolutely definitive, this list.
That's right.
And we will see if Life Itself actually makes this list of top 5 flashback movies.
Ooh.
Stay tuned.
Yeah, who knows?
All right. I don't know. Why don't you go first, Bob? Nominate a top 5 flashback-based movie.
I'm going to go with The Shawshank Redemption.
That is a good movie. And I feel like everyone who was in college in the 90s, it's like one of their very favorite movies.
It really is. It's almost like you want to not put it on the list because you want to make a point of like, well, it's good, but is it really that good? I don't know. And it's like, you're just doing that because everybody loves it. It's like, well, that's true too. Yeah. So I have mixed feelings, but not really. I really like this movie quite a bit.
It seems like that's a good movie, although I don't know if I've ever actually seen it all the way through. Partly the iconoclast in me, but I should probably go back and check it. But I can't disagree, but it's not on my list.
All right.
I'm going to go with I'm going to put Fight Club on there for me.
Okay, I saw this.
Which is pretty much in that same category of movies that people went to college in the 90s love. But I'm still doing it.
I was iconoclast the other way. I remember I watched Fight Club with you after it was the thing, and I was like, this movie isn't as good as everyone thinks it is. Don't like. But now I bet if I watched it, I'd be like, yeah, it's fine.
All right. I like Fight Club, even though it's a cliche. I even read the book. I think I read the book a couple times, to be quite honest. Anyway, what's next?
Life of Pi.
Oh.
This movie did have quite a bit of flashbacks. You know, the boy stuck on an ocean. Well, there's more to it than that, but this was a very beautiful movie that kind of was one of my favorite talk about religion indirectly, but not overtly or heavy-handedly. I got a lot of inspiration out of this. I thought it was an interesting story. Really enjoyed it.
That's another one that I've not seen. That was like a big deal of a movie before we were fully doing this. I was like a amateur movie critic like I am now. I'm going to go with Amadeus.
Yeah, that's another one. I saw after it was a thing, and I didn't get it.
It came out when we were super young. It has to be archaeology for us to know Amadeus, but.
You know what? I think I also saw it when I was still super young. It's like I didn't see it when I was 5. I saw it when I was 16. I still don't. It didn't help me, but I bet if I saw it as an adult, maybe it'd matter more.
But certainly, a lot is talked about in Flashback, and I like it.
All right.
Do you have another for us?
Yeah, I don't think we're overlapping at all. I'm going to go with Saving Private Ryan.
Oh, all right.
It's a flashback movie, war movie. Really enjoyed it. This is how you do flashbacks. Not too heavy, but still effective.
I guess it is. I mean, I like the movie pretty well, but as you say that, I don't remember exactly the flashback characteristic. Who are they talking to? Oh, yeah, no, it's like they've got like the men going to the graveyard and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the beginning?
Right.
Okay, I guess that's kind of a flashback.
It's kind of a, this one can
like
drop
Titanic
off.
kind of
Yeah,
is.
it's not, yeah. Now, talking about a movie that would be on some people's list, but that I'm sure neither of us have on is Titanic.
Yeah.
It's in this category.
Seems like I could probably do a whole podcast episode about our history with the movie Titanic. Maybe one day. Memento is the other one I'm going to put on there.
Oh, God damn. That is a good one. I didn't think to put that on my list, and it's super good. That's Christopher Nolan before he was Christopher Nolan, Batman Christopher Nolan. So, yeah, that's a good movie.
Okay. Any more?
Big Fish.
Big Fish. Well, since we didn't really overlap, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right. Okay. We will do that. And I guess I'll just go down the order we named them because.
Yeah, it doesn't bother me. I would elevate Memento a little bit. I'd give that a bump. But other than that, whatever.
Okay. I will move Memento up 2 spots. We're going to do this then. The Shawshank Redemption, Fight Club, Life of Pi, Memento, Amadeus, Saving Private Ryan, and Big Fish. That's your definitive top 5-ish list of flashback-based movies.
Yeah, I really like it, actually. That bump of Memento is just right. It's just like a little extra pinch of salt to make me feel like, well, I mean, we didn't not plan this exactly this way. Come on.
Perfect. Well, there you go. Life itself, spoiled. And if you listen without watching it first, we hope you can now fake it fairly well in whatever social situations you may need to. And that is this week's episode of the Practically Culture Spoilercast. Join us next week as we spoil. Oh my goodness, Bob, we didn't even talk. What do we spoil next week? Fingers crossed on the Sisters Brothers.
Sisters Brothers, let's do it. Yeah.
And we have the usual top 5-ish list and chat about what we're watching. You can find more from us at practicallyculture.com, on YouTube, and in your favorite podcast app. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter. I'm at Logan Bo. Bob's at Bob Caswell. Send us a message, ask us a question, let us know you like the show. Come back and get your pop culture spoiled. Thanks for rocking with us.
Have a good one.
All right.
Hey.
We made it through. It is more fun with shows we don't like sometimes.
I had a good time. And actually, the timing